And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting outside of speed off. Bring in SPD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Décollage.
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If there's methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good morning. We are taking a live look right now at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where Falcon 9 is finally set to take to the skies again, albeit the gray skies of Florida, launching the Hera mission. I am Sawyer Rosenstein, and I will be your host for this morning's launch to an asteroid here. I'm seeing all the 5x5s in chat, which means you guys can hear me, and that's great to know, but don't worry, you don't have to hear just me. I'm joined by an awesome team today. Joining me in the studio is Cody. How's it going, Cody?
It's going good. It's a bit of an early morning launch for me over here on the West Coast, but I'm all here for it. I can't wait to see this probe, on its way. It's going to be a pretty exciting launch. It's always a very exciting launch when it's maybe not always a Starlink, changes things up a little bit.
Yeah, this isn't your ordinary Starlink launch because it's not a Starlink launch. And joining from the field today, we have our awesome Cape team. D, how's it going?
It's wet out here. It's starting to clear up a little bit, but I've been getting rained on for the last couple hours. But I can see the launch pad now, which is an improvement.
That is indeed an improvement to be able to see the rocket. And then we also have Max Evans out in the field as well. And then helping out behind the scenes, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, is Carson this morning. So we've got quite an exciting mission here to talk about. Cody, do you mind giving us a rundown of what exactly the Hera mission is?
Yeah, sure. This is a pretty cool mission that's going to be launching here pretty soon. So Hera originally was going to be a probe that launched alongside the DART mission that we saw a while ago. DART was a probe that impacted a binary pair of asteroids, which means it's a asteroid orbiting another asteroid. It's Didymos and Dimorphos. Originally, the AIM orbiter, which is the original name of the Hera probe, was going to launch alongside it and observe the asteroids as the impact happened. And so this was going to be a great way that we were going to be able to get a lot more data. But due to funding and regulatory issues, the AIM project was canceled in 2016. Later on, it was decided that ground observation was going to be able to take over for the AIM probe's mission. But in 2019, with renewed interest, the European Space Agency was able to get some funding to make the Hera probe. Hera is the Greek goddess of marriage. I'm not sure the significance of that compared to the mission, but it's a pretty cool name, I'd say. The Hera probe was manufactured by OHB, and yeah, its main goals are to, one, find the internal structure of Dimorphos. So, is it a very solid core? Does it have any internal structure due to how the actual asteroid is made up? And determine the momentum of both asteroids to see how the DART mission actually affected the orbits on a much closer scale compared to how we were able to observe it using ground stations. And then the secondary objective is to kind of observe what the structure of Dimorphos kind of looks like after the impact. We don't really know because we've only been able to see it with ground-based telescopes. So is it a closely held together shattered piece of rock, or is it basically a full asteroid still? What does the impact site look like? So these are all very important questions that need to be answered by this probe.
It's yeah. What were you gonna say?
Sorry, yeah, I was going to take a pause there, but on the probe, to kind of get that information, we got two very cool CubeSats that are actually going alongside it. This isn't just a launch with one probe. The main probe, which is Hera, will actually release these two kind of 6U XL CubeSats, and they'll each have their own kind of experiments to go there. Uventes, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that pronunciation, is one of the smaller CubeSats, and it will use gravitational fields to kind of map the internal structure of the asteroid, which I think is crazy. They're also going to be using the Doppler shift of the communications between these CubeSats and radar to be able to look at the gravitational fields around these two asteroids, which crazy experiments going on this. So they're going to be able to get some internal structure maps up to 1.5 meters in resolution. And then the other CubeSat, Milani, will actually be doing more surface level analysis by taking photos. It will be looking at radar of the actual sites. And it'll be further analyzing kind of how the surface was affected by the DART impact.
I really wish they would have kept the name. That way you had to aim the dart. I mean, come on, that was too perfect. Whoever came up with
Come
that.
on.
Legitimate.
Swear.
Yeah, but that was them, not me.
That is true. That is true.
Now, obviously, one of the big questions with this launch actually going off today would be the weather. So, D, where are we at weather-wise?
So going into today, the probability of violation was 85%. So obviously you're looking right now, there are clouds overhead. I do not see any bit of blue sky, and those concerns were the thick cloud layer rule as well as the cumulus cloud layer rule. But upper level wind shear and solar activity are not anticipated to be an issue. Now, if this launch were to delay for whatever reason, we of course have the hurricane in the Gulf that is heading in this direction. So I wouldn't expect it to get all that much better, but they're clearly aiming to go for it today. So hopefully they're looking for a break in the weather that will give them conditions that are acceptable for launch. And we've seen them do this before, particularly on Polaris Dawn. They really threaded the needle on that one. They took the one of their three opportunities that had green weather in order to launch. And so they don't have that many opportunities today. But hopefully, if it lines up with their plan T0, they will be able to get off the ground.
Yeah, and it is worth noting this is an instantaneous launch window. So either it goes at 10:52 a.m. Eastern or it doesn't. But everything seems like they're proceeding and they're going to try. The Brevard Emergency Operations Center should be up and running as well. Although I believe they have their wording wrong. This is not Crew 9. But that does bring up an interesting point. In that after Crew 9, we saw that investigation required following the second stage not deorbiting where it was supposed to. So how come we're launching today if that isn't technically resolved yet, Cody?
That's a very interesting point. What we're seeing from the FAA is they're going to allow this launch because this second stage is just kind of getting thrown out there into heliocentric orbit. because the second stage is not deorbiting, they're going to allow this mission to go through and continue the investigation on what happened during the deorbit burn on Crew 9, which actually gives us some pretty cool insight into what the issue might have been on Crew 9. It kind of whittles down the scary options from, worse things to better things. And so it's very interesting that they're going to let this mission go through, but it makes sense if the issue is entirely on deorbit burns for second stages, to let this one go if it doesn't have any chance of deorbiting. It's going to be pretty far out there.
Exactly. And when Adrian asked the FAA, this was the response that you see on screen. As you were just saying, that the FAA has determined the absence of a second stage re-entry for this mission adequately mitigates the primary risk to the public in the event of a reoccurrence of the mishap experienced with the Crew 9 mission. So we shall see. It doesn't mean that any other launches have given the go-ahead yet, but at least for today's launch, we do have that go-ahead. All right, let's see here. This is a very unique mission in that this booster is actually going to be expended. For once, we are not set to recover the vehicle. Cody, do you have the history of this booster?
Yeah, this is actually it has a pretty good history on this booster. It's a pretty storied history. As he said, this will be an expended launch. This booster was turned around in 57 days from its previous mission, which was at Vandenberg, actually. This is booster 1061. This will be booster 1061's 23rd and final launch. Some very important missions that this booster actually launched were the first two crew launches, Crew 1 and 2. This booster flew both Crew 1 and 2, so it's a little sad to see this one go, but it has performed extremely well. It's been in Vandenberg actually for a while, so it's very interesting that they brought this one over for the expendable flight for Hera. The last few launches have been things like Transporter 4-5, Korea 245, Maxar 1, ABSM, and then a total of 10 Starlink launches. So quite a few launches out of this rocket. It had, I believe, an average turnaround of about 65 days and had a record of a 24-day turnaround on this booster. So a very, very storied booster.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's kind of a shame to see it go in a way. I mean, the history behind it, launching Crew 1, the first operational crew flight from U.S. soil since STS-135. I mean, yeah, it's hard to see them go sometimes, but Alexandra Pinto is a member asking, when the boosters are expendable, do they choose boosters based on anything in particular, or do they just make different boosters just be expended? Dee, do we have any inkling on that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was getting ready to clean my lens.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just asking if there's any rhyme or reason to the boosters that they pick for expending. I don't think we know, do we?
We don't really have any sort of a solid answer. It makes sense for them to want to expend ones that are higher in flight versus brand new boosters, certainly. But there are, I'm sure, a number of trade-offs that we are not privy to in that decision-making process.
Yeah, and it seems likely again that they would use one of the higher cadence ones, as Cody mentioned, 23 flights for this one. So it's going to be a shame to see it go, but served us well. I do want to thank some people here support-wise. DJ Esmerald, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Roberts Auto Repair, thank you for becoming a Padrat member. Telstar86, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Flipper79, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. And with a super chat saying, someone asked for a super chat. Well, I guess asked and answered.
Yep.
And then Ninja Decimator. Pew pew. Saying, morning Space Nerds, got my Merlin engine shirt on, hoping they like this candle today. Thanks for the coverage as always. Well, thank you. We are keeping our fingers crossed here that the weather improves. And the go no go poll for fueling usually happens around now-ish, and we should be hearing the result hopefully in the next 5 to 7 minutes, with, if all going according to plan, verifying the go for propellant load at T minus 38 minutes, followed by the start of propellant load at T minus 35 minutes, beginning with both the RP1, rocket propellant 1, the refined form of kerosene at stage 1, and the liquid oxygen onto stage 1, as well as the RP1 on stage 2. Let's take some more questions here. Comrade number 2207 is asking Cody, how long is this mission going to be?
Yeah, so this mission is going to be about, let me see. I'm so sorry. I have this somewhere and I had it off the top of my head.
So
It
good.
will
I'll give you a second to
be,
find it. Want me to come back to you on that one?
yeah, I'm so sorry. I have it listed somewhere. I just need to find it.
That's fine. I'll put that back into the queue in the meantime. And Johan talking about the sort of emergency approval. Will this also happen to Europa Clipper, as it's also not deorbiting the second stage?
Well,
I don't think they made an official announcement on that yet, but
yeah, no, I haven't heard anything on that one. But I guess it would make sense.
right. And the other important thing, again, with both that and Europa Clipper, with Hera as well, you have those timelines of, you have a window that you want to hit to be able to get to this asteroid pair, as well as for Europa Clipper to get to, well, Europa. So that is something they are definitely going to try and do, get that within there, and hopefully the FAA says, yeah, that's fine as well for, as Jack likes to call it, Clippy.
Yep, and I have the transfer time for Hera.
Go for it.
Okay. So Hera is going to, launch today, hopefully. And then it will arrive at Didymus in Dimorphos on December 14th, 2025. And so it's going to, 2026. It's going to have a transfer time of 2 years, 2 months, 7 days, which is 798 days. And it arrives on December 14th, which is my birthday.
Oh, there you go. An early birthday present.
Indeed,
Or
indeed.
late in this case.
It'll be on delivery for a while.
Yeah, there you go. Your package is in transit. Let's see here. Booster 9 is asking, D, what's the main reason of expending B-1061 on this flight?
Yeah, so it has everything to do with the trajectory and the payload mass. If they don't have enough fuel left over that they can perform a landing burn out on a drone ship, or that they can do a boost back, they have to expend it. And so we see that a lot more with Falcon Heavies, because those are the more high power missions with larger payloads into higher orbits normally. But if a payload simply requires more thrust, they won't have the fuel left over to perform that landing burn to recover the booster.
It's all about performance with this. All right. Let's see here. I guess it's an interesting question then, and I don't know if we have an exact reason for it, but then Khaled is wondering, why don't they just use a recoverable Falcon Heavy instead? Any thoughts, Cody?
Well, this could fall into a thing where we see with different launch vehicles, they have different launch configurations for, their mass. Like we have Atlas V or Vulcan that have different numbers of SRBs. And the Falcon Heavy step just might not be worth it cost-wise to be able to have to reuse 3 boosters versus expending 1. The cost just might be a little bit higher, and the mass might not be required. I mean, the mass of Hera is pretty comparable to a single V2 Starlink. So to get an entire Falcon Heavy while also having another Falcon Heavy already on the way for Europa Clipper, it would be a lot of stress to be able to launch those things. And now that I think of it, I don't know if they'd be able to fit that on the manifest with both launches having to go at 39A. Am I right in saying that, Sawyer?
Yeah, I think so. It's a matter of, being able to fit that window. It's usually a couple week turnaround time in between missions, and I don't think we've seen back-to-back Falcon Heavies go anywhere near that fast in the time frame. So at that point, if you have Falcon 9 single stick that can do the performance, you have a booster that's flown 23 times, why not? Why not expend it, get this mission off the ground as soon as possible, and get it doing science? Good question, though. And 98 Central asking, so does that mean this booster has been stripped of landing legs and grid fins? Yes. They typically, for missions that are not going to be reused, remove the grid fins, remove the landing legs, and let it fly semi-naked in a way there. But from the imagery that I've seen so far, I definitely did not see any grid fins. I don't know if, D, you've seen any different from your vantage point.
I most certainly do not. I don't have the absolute best view, but I do not see any grid fins.
Yeah. So that's typically what they do for these these expendable missions. Because hey, save the parts. Why not, right? Coming up on T-minus 38 minutes here, so hopefully we should get word of whether they are going to go for fueling or not. As you can see, they're on the radar, though. Definitely keeping an eye out on weather. It looks like some rain coming through the area. How is it where you are, by the way, D?
It's not too bad right now. There is another cell heading our direction, as well as some denser and lower clouds making their way over Slick 40 right now. But it is not actively raining at the moment, which is a improvement.
That's a great start. And yeah, because there are weather criteria, obviously not just for launch, but also for fueling as well, although those primarily have to do with lightning more so than precipitation. Let's see here. Take some more of your questions. Uh, Here's one from Six String Simpleton. Cody, does Falcon 9 have engine out capability even on launches with an instant window?
That's a good question. I would believe that even if they get off the ground, that they would still have the margin within this launch, especially with this launch, the margin to be able to get it to orbit anyways. I know that it has engine out capability at a certain point in flight. That's one of the main reasons they went with 9 engines, or the redundancy and engine out capability. So I believe as long as they get off the pad and they're at a phase in flight when it's okay to have that engine out capability, that they would be able to make it all the way. There might be a little bit of a performance hit, and that can always affect the longevity of these deep space missions. The performance of that launch can do a lot to extend or remove the life of the vehicle. And so it's always good to make sure that we hope for the best. We have a really good launch with no engines out. But I do believe it is possible on this launch to have an engine out or two.
Yeah. Also, Curveless here with an interesting question of, will there ever be a use case for an expendable Starship? I mean, besides all of the current testing right now, I think that would be one heck of a payload to be able to have to launch an expendable Starship. Just thinking out loud on that one.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I'm thinking like that's a space station core, but even then I feel like you could reuse Starship.
If the performance numbers that they're expecting for the final upgraded version are going to be what they say they are, there's basically no mission that's impossible at that point.
Exactly, yeah.
Pretty darn close to it, at least.
I guess unless you count using the Starship, as like a lunar base or something. If that's not coming back and being reused, but I wouldn't even count that as being expended. That's just a mission.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I do want to thank some people here just before we get into fueling. Hopefully they get into fueling. Devin Waldron, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Shay, thank you also for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And Chris W, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership as well. Let's see. So at this point now, we hopefully will have to keep an eye out here for fueling. Cody, do you mind giving us a rundown of the timeline of what we can expect through this countdown?
Yep. Yeah. So at about T-minus 38 minutes, so about 4 minutes ago, we should have got the launch directors go to start propellant loading. And so coming up here, well, actually 30 seconds ago, the first stage RP1 and LOX loading should have started. And then in about, I'd say, was that 15 minutes? At 2 minutes and 20 seconds, we're going to see our big 20-minute event for LOX chill down, clearing the LOX lines so that they can start loading stage 2. At T-minus 16 minutes, we're going to see the second stage LOX load begin. Then we're going to begin loading fuel on that second stage. And then at T-minus 5 minutes, we're going to see our strong back retract, where that large launch tower will begin to bend back to about 5 degrees. Is that right, Sawyer?
1.8.
1.8. I'm sorry. There we go. 1.8 degrees back. And then we'll have our first stage LOX load complete at about 3 minutes, 10 seconds before launch. Second stage LOX load will end 2 minutes, 10 seconds before launch. At 1 minute, the guidance goes internal, and the tanks pressurized for flight on our vehicle. The launch director will then give the verification for launch at T-minus 4 seconds. At T-minus 3 seconds, we'll see those 9 Merlin engines roar to life, and then 3 seconds later, the launch clamps will be released, and Falcon 9 will begin to fly.
There we go. And we also are hearing confirmation now that the propellant load has begun. So at this point, Falcon 9 is now getting fueled for flight. Weather is currently now 60% favorable for liftoff at 10:52 a.m. Eastern. That is surprising, and I'm glad to hear it though, because otherwise, it was originally 15% going into today's countdown before this.
I'm almost getting Artemis 1 vibes from this, where the probability violation was pretty high for that launch, right? And then it came down, and they were able to get the rocket off the pad in kind of a gap in the clouds, right?
I believe so. That was a much later night launch, though.
Yes.
I will say the clouds are coming this way. I can see rain hitting other launch pads, and bags are being blown off of cameras right now. So it's impressive if they could launch in this weather, but hopefully this cell will pass in time. And yeah, 60% favorable is impressive.
Yeah. They must see something, but hey, we'll take it. All right, let's see. Interesting question. Assuming they don't get off today, I won't say the S word. Would they need to, would they need to roll back because of the hurricane? Dee, do you have any insights on how that works with Hurcon out there?
I do not have too many specific insights. I believe we are currently in Hurcon 4 and expecting Hurcon 3, and the numbers are basically the amount of time until tropical storm or hurricane force winds, I believe, can reach the location. So at different Hurcon levels, there are different levels of preparedness that, like, whether it's all things normal, just a heightened state of awareness, whether it goes down to preparing all buildings and whatnot, or whether it's essential personnel only and the gates are closed. So I believe we're likely going to enter Hercon 3 at some point today. And it would not surprise me at all if it did not get off the ground today, if it were, if they would roll back.
Yeah, for those unaware right now, Milton is the name of the storm. The hurricane was just recently clocked in with winds over 115 miles an hour by Hurricane Hunter planes, meaning it is now a Category 4 hurricane heading towards Florida. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on, and hopefully this gets off the ground. Otherwise, I would not be surprised either, as Dee was talking about, if they have to roll it back. But let's hope not. Let's hope it goes. Let's see. Peggy Perry, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Alan, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And Shay also saying you can't spell Hera without Ra. That is true. I also can't spell Hera without hair, like the tortoise and the hare. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I like it. Here's one from Jeff. Is there any degradation of the grid fins and landing legs over time? Can they reuse 1061's removed parts? Cody, any idea?
That's a good question. I suppose we haven't seen that before, I don't believe. I mean, as far as we can tell, but the titanium grid fins should be holding up. They're pretty strong, and I would expect them to maybe wear down a little bit over so many reentries. That heating definitely wearing down on it. But I'm not sure if they've ever replaced them. On a surface level, I don't see why they couldn't do that. But it might just be a whole thing of, if you're getting an entirely new vehicle, you just want to have an entirely new vehicle from the start. There could be things you don't possibly, you couldn't understand. You might not understand about the landing legs and how they've reacted over so many landings, and so it might just be safe to keep those parts brand new whenever you have a new vehicle go there.
I mean, we do see with engines, we know that they're swapping those out regularly. So I'm sure they're monitoring for wear and for any stress fractures, anything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw legs and grid fins be reused at some point, because yeah, they already exist. If they have those testing procedures, if they know that it would have been fine to launch again on this one, why not use it on another high flight one? Whether it's it had a slightly hard landing, a crush core, something like that, they've got a drop-in replacement ready then.
Exactly. Spare parts, always good to have, if nothing else. And you could see there in that picture on the left, the cleanest part of the rocket there, where those landing legs usually mount. Normally, again, during the sootiest part of flight, they are folded up before unfolding for landing, and those grid fins also not visible on the first stage, which just looks so wrong. I don't know why. It just looks wrong.
Yeah, whenever I see a new Falcon 9 launch and it's not sooty, it's just something seems so wrong without a sooty Falcon 9.
Oh my gosh, someone said, what if they recycle the grid fins and landing legs to make flaps for Ship 26? No, don't bring up that monstrosity, please.
I'm in favor of this.
Why?
I don't know. It'd be fun. I like Ship 26.
I thought we were friends. I don't know if we can be friends anymore. Let's see here. Khaled wants to know, Cody, can Falcon 9 launch during rain?
No. I mean, with certain cloud rules, I'm not sure if the rain is the part that would stop. It would be more the anvil cloud rule, or sorry, the different cloud rules for charge for lightning. Am I right in saying that, or am I incorrect in that assessment on rain because I can't think of a time that they have launched in rain, but I could be missing something there.
Yeah, there is a rule called the flight through precipitation rule, which is exactly what it sounds like. No flight through precipitation, aka rain. So I don't know the exact reason behind why no flying through the rain itself, especially when you consider something like Soyuz, which just says, you know what? Forget that. I'm going anyway. I don't care about no rain, no snow, no blizzard, no nothing. I'm going to launch. But yeah, for pretty much all US launch vehicles, they do not fly into the rain. The reason for thunderstorms, of course, like you were talking about, the concern of creating lightning as it goes through the clouds, like we've seen on Apollo 12. But yeah, it's no flying in the rain. Singing in the rain, encouraged. Flying in the rain, no. JS Web Productions is wondering, D, what happens to the second stage on this mission?
Yeah, so that is the special thing about this mission, and a reason it is able to fly right now is it's going on a trajectory where it will not re-enter Earth's atmosphere. Of course, after the Crew 9's second stage's re-entry outside of the planned zone, the FAA is doing that investigation. But here, because there's not a second stage re-entry, it's going off into space. That is not a concern, and there would be no risk posed to people. It wouldn't be able to have the same anomaly occur.
Yep, so this one kind of just ends up in deep space. That's one of the benefits of these kind of Earth orbit leaving trajectories, is it's just on its way. I see a lot of people ask if we know the exact performance boost that they get from expendable mode. I don't think they've ever released the numbers of just how much of an extra delta V gain they get from this expendable configuration. I will say though, based on that weather, it's probably a good thing that this isn't a drone ship landing, or any landing for that matter, right?
Yeah, I would also say it's probably changed over the years. We saw how like crewed missions with Dragon 2 have been able to become RTLS missions due to a changed landing profile. So over time, as they have improved the landing profile, the gap has probably lessened, where the gap of performance improvement has probably lessened as they've really optimized their landing profile.
That too, yeah. As they've been flying more and more, they've really gotten that extra squeeze of performance out of it. We've also seen that just in the number of Starlinks that they're able to launch. Now they were able to keep increasing that number. And again, to the point where for the original, or the more original V1, V1.5s, 60 plus of those satellites launching at once. Even now, with the V2 minis, it was originally, 21, and it's bumped up to 22, and now we've seen launches with 23 of them. It's impressive how they've been able to fine-tune this rocket over the years. You can also see there, it looks like that venting as they continue to fuel Falcon 9. So far, so good. Joaquim getting a couple items from shop.nasaspaceflight.com with the message, "Go Falcon, go." That is yes. We want this to go today. Getting the thrust collection with the BE4 mugs, which beautiful engines that worked great the other day, and a Merlin hoodie. Nice. I love the thrust collection. That's one of my favorites. I'm an RS-25 person myself, but hey, we got the Merlins ready to fly today, and now you'll be able to look fly wearing them.
I agree with you, Sawyer. I'm a bit of a RS-25 person myself. Out of that collection, RS-25 is pretty sick.
Yep. For those that are Starship fans, there's also Raptor. You've got the BE4s, you've got the RS-25s, and you've got the Merlins. So we got the thrust you can trust today from Merlin. And that's shop.nasaspaceflight.com. All right. It is T minus 20 minutes and 35 seconds. We are now just 15 seconds away from not just any vent, but the best vent, as we like to call it here. Cody, what is the T minus 20 minute, 20-second vent that should be starting just about now?
Yeah, so this 20-minute vent, you're going to see a large plume of liquid oxygen that's going to be coming out of the launch tower here, and its job is to clear the LOX lines for chill down right before they start loading that LOX onto stage 2. We want to make sure it's nice and chilled down before we start loading all that LOX on there, and they're doing all this late loading because they want to make sure that they're keeping as much of that liquid oxygen into stage 2 as possible right before launch. Of course, liquid oxygen likes to not be liquid at room temperature, and so they're doing these very late loads right before launch to make sure that they can maintain as much of that liquid oxygen inside of the rocket as possible so the least amount boils off as they're sitting there on the pad.
Yep, and this should last about 4 minutes. And once you see that stop, that is indicative of the fact that the liquid oxygen load will begin on the second stage. It's always interesting just to see the fast fill procedure with SpaceX versus, say, the Vulcan launch that we saw the other day, where they start fueling 4 hours or so in advance. It's honestly impressive.
It really is. I mean, the amount of propellant that they just have to get into that rocket is insane. The pumps are insane. All the ground equipment on these launch pads is just so insane, and they definitely need more attention brought to them because they're incredible pieces of engineering along with the rockets.
Insane in the membrane.
Insane in the brain.
There
Yes,
you go. I knew I liked you. Let's see. Charles Hall asking the all-important question. D. Stubby?
I think it is not, because this is a high power. The stubby nozzle is a trade-off. They don't get quite the efficiency from the second stage, but if they don't need the performance, they can trade it off in order to save that material. Whereas here they are on a high power. They need high performance. So I do not believe we have a stubby nozzle today, unfortunately.
Fortunately, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, very fortunately.
Sounds like it's 2 against 1 there, D. Sorry. I'm sure people in chat will back you up.
Here,
I know
hold
there's a
on,
bunch of
hold on.
stubby nozzle fans.
Let me get Max in here. I think I think we're a bit tied right now.
Oh no.
Did somebody say stubby?
Hi, Max.
How's it going, everybody? But stubby nozzle is best. Stubby is king. Anyone who says otherwise, right to prison.
Oh man.
Well, let me know when the paddy wagon comes, because I'm going to prison, I guess. Also hearing from ESA that the Hera spacecraft is now on internal power rather than getting power from the ground. And that's the thing with the strong back that we see here. You know, obviously it raises it vertical. You see the vent coming off it now that will likely stop in about 10 seconds or so. But I mean, that strong back does quite a bunch for this rocket and for the payloads. Right, Cody?
Sorry, can you say that one more time? I was taking a drink of water.
Nope, not allowed.
Oh no. Toy.
No, I was saying the strong back with the venting now stopped there. Talking about the spacecraft going on internal power, that strongback does quite a bunch for both the rocket and the payload besides just fueling.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of their link. That tower is the link between mission control and the rocket whenever the rocket is not on the internal flight computers. All the data, all the electricity, everything you need to get into the rocket is going through that launch tower. And so it's a very important link to make sure that the rocket is operating properly right before launch.
Oh yeah, all of the important ground systems, all of the electrical, everything needed to keep that spacecraft and the rocket itself ready to go. It's amazing how much that does. By the way, for Tom in chat who just said I'm only here for the landing, about that.
Sorry.
This is an expended first stage, which for people just joining as we hit the T-minus 15-minute mark, do you mind giving a quick recap of the mission and where we're at, Cody?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so a quick recap here. The Hera probe was a probe that was originally going to launch alongside DART. Eventually got pushed off here and it became Hera. Hera is going to investigate the binary pair Dimorphos and Didymos, the two asteroids that DART hit in September of 2022. And its mission is to really evaluate the two asteroids and look at how much effect did DART really have? So they're going to be releasing 2 CubeSats. They're going to do further investigations on the 2 asteroids. One thing I think I failed to mention at the start, there's some pretty interesting things at the end of life for these missions. The 2 CubeSats will attempt landings on Dimorphos using its cold gas thrusters, and then ESA is currently evaluating whether the main Hera probe will be able to land on one of the poles of the Didymos main central asteroid. So it's very interesting. This mission is going to possibly give us some really cool photos from the surface of these 2 asteroids, and definitely get us a lot of data about the internal structure of these asteroids and how we can possibly deflect an asteroid in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. DART was an asteroid redirect mission to basically save ourselves if there was an asteroid coming towards Earth that could potentially be a life-ending event. So it's very, very amazing what we're able to do now. I mean, we have the OSIRIS-REx mission that came back. We had DART. We now have this that's going to be continuing on that legacy and that tradition. I mean, it's so cool. What a time to be alive for science.
Indeed. I was in my studies last night. I was looking at a ESA video on the mission, and I loved the line, "The dinosaurs didn't have a space program, but we do." I just loved that line that they had that video. So, yeah.
That we know of.
That we know of. Ooh.
Not saying it's aliens, but aliens.
Raptors in space. You cracked the
God.
code, Sawyer.
Dinosaurs on a spaceship. Let's see. We have Chaos Coordinator. Thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And Pacific Northwest PNWUT. Thank you for gifting a Red Team membership as well. Paul Graves asking, is there air conditioning inside the fairings to keep the payloads happy? Yes, there is. Right, D?
I'm so sorry. What was that?
Is there air conditioning inside the fairings to keep the payloads happy?
Yeah, I believe they do have a climate system, basically, because, of course, the Florida heat, the Florida humidity, not ideal for spacecraft. So even when we see payloads encapsulated moving along the streets or something, they've got umbilicals connected to control the environment in there to make sure that it is acceptable before the payloads are up in space.
Also, shout out to all the people in chat who caught the Doctor Who reference there. I'm glad you appreciate the mavity of that joke. Continuing along here, still seeing questions about the FAA side of things here again. So, can you kind of just help clear it up again, Cody, of why, even though that they haven't fully resolved the Stage 2 thing with Falcon 9, that we're seeing a Falcon 9 launch again?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question and a really good question to pose there. The FAA has said because this mission does not have the second stage re-entering, it's not targeting a re-entry using its engine, and it's just being flung out into a heliocentric orbit, it's fine to launch. So this kind of gives us an insight to the problems with that second stage during Crew 9, and it was a very specific issue to do with it re-entering and how it targets its re-entry. So it's, again, because it is going out into this heliocentric orbit, never to return to Earth, we're going to see this launch go ahead despite the investigation still continuing.
Yes, the investigation continues, but the launch goes on in this case, at least.
Indeed.
We are coming up now on 10 minutes until scheduled liftoff. The latest that we had heard for weather was that everything was 60% go. D, how is it looking out there right now?
It is still cloudy, but it is actually a lot better. It's brighter, the clouds seem thinner, and the cell that was heading our way seems to have rained itself out. So we might not have views very long into flight because it is still a consistent cloud layer, no bit of blue sky, but they might get this thing off the ground.
And hopefully that should produce some fantastic sound, at least with that thick of a cloud layer. Because the important thing, again, with the clouds is basically what type of clouds they're flying through. Cumulus cloud rule is there for the concern of basically flying through a cloud that could potentially cause lightning. The term, for those who remember the Ares 1X launch that kept popping up, triboelectrification.
I love the triboelectrification rule.
Oh,
Such a fun word.
it is. It quickly became one of my favorites. I mean, one of the curses because that kept delaying the mission, but otherwise, yeah. And in terms of the weather at KSC, per the constantly updating forecast that they have, at last check, there are definitely some strong winds in the area of KSC and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, with some 35 knot peak winds, getting between 35 and 50 knots. So that might be something to keep an eye on too, as you also see a little bit of shake there from the camera and the light breeze or wind. Let's see here. Spike, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Reminder, Capcom and above gets access to the NSF Discord. So hopefully we will see you in Discord once you get all set up there, along with Spring Forward, who also became a Capcom member. Thank you so much for the generous support. I mean, without what you guys do to help us, we would not be able to bring you these views, have our team out there, even with the weather being 60%, to get the fantastic views. And Matt PD saying, shout out to the space community. I have a Bamboo Lab 3D, the brother in King 3D printers. Within hours of the Ship 33 rollout, a user has a perfect model for printing. That's amazing. 3D printed stuff is so cool to me still.
I love the bamboo printers. They're great.
Never
I got to work.
actually used them.
Oops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I got to work with one over the summer during an internship, and the bamboo carbon, oh my gosh. It's such a good printer. You can just like let it print and it will do the print, and it's super hands off. It's amazing.
Yeah. We are now under 7 minutes away from liftoff here. We should be getting ready to chill down those Merlin 1D engines. D, why do we chill the 1Ds?
So similarly to the reason that we see the 20-minute vent like cooling down the lines in advance, you don't want to thermally shock your engines with cryogenic propellant that puts unnecessary stress on them. So by starting to cool them down in advance and a bit more slowly, you can avoid that thermal shock and that extra stress on the engines.
Yep, and you'll actually hear in flight sometimes the same thing for the Merlin vacuum. That one they do after lifting off. Let's see here. Steve Holt's asking, will these fairing halves be recovered? Do we know, Cody?
I was looking everywhere and I couldn't find any information on recovery ships downrange. So I think for this launch, we're going to assume that we are not getting a fairing recovery. It would make a little bit of sense because this is a very high energy trajectory. So I don't know if we'll be able to get those fairings back. But yeah, I could not find any information on recovery ships out there.
Yeah, these with this trajectory as well, it would be over 1,000 kilometers away where these do splash down. Which, as we hit the 5 minute mark here, I don't know if we actually mentioned that trajectory. I know D will let you head on out so that you can track this launch, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. I will see you on the other side.
Sounds good. And as we're under that 5 minute mark, can you just give a quick trajectory where this vehicle is going?
Yeah, so this is going to be launching into a 31-degree inclined orbit. Orbital information besides that, I was having a hard time finding it, but I know we are going to be launching into a slightly lower orbit initially, using the Falcon 9 during our during our second engine start 1. We're going to be entering a lower orbit, and then about an hour after that, or not an hour, sorry, but about 40 minutes after that, we're going to have our second engine start 1, which is going to inject us into that heliocentric orbit to get all the way out to Hera. We're doing a regular sort of home and transfer, but it will be doing a flyby of Mars. We are going to have a flyby of Mars with this mission to try and slingshot us out there further to get to the 2 asteroids.
There we go. And there is where all of the SpaceX recovery fleet is located currently. You can see Shannon in port, Go Cosmos, and Doug hanging out there towards the southeast. And shout out there to Gav, who is the king of the fleet here when it comes to everything to do with the port and all of the ships that are associated with rocket ships here. Under 3.5 minutes to go now until liftoff. You can see there on the right that strong back retracting ever so slightly, inching its way back there to that 1.8 degrees, which will fully throw back at liftoff to get out of the way of the vehicle. We should be coming up on wrapping up fueling here. Get those call outs shortly. And then the important thing at T-minus 1 minute, Falcon 9 entering startup when the onboard computers take control of the count. And at T-minus 40 seconds or so, we should hear, hopefully, the go for launch. We will see the big question, of course, being weather. We are now 2.5 minutes away. You can see there's still more venting there coming from the strong back. We should see one more kind of vent similar to the 20-minute vent, and that will indicate the end of fueling, right?
Yeah, so we're going to have one more vent just to purge those lines, make sure there's nothing left in there. They're trying to wait until the last possible moment so that they can top off the fuel and make sure it's very, very full. But yeah, they just want to purge those lines and make sure it's all good to launch.
That is what we're hoping for. Now under 2 minutes to go until liftoff here. Everything proceeding on this mission to continue the legacy of DART, heading out to a pair of asteroids again. This is so cool. The Hera mission by ESA, and there is that vent at 90 seconds here. That typically means that fuel load is now complete on board Falcon 9. The other thing I should note when we hit the T-minus 1 minute mark, that is also when the tanks on board are pressurized to flight levels. So in about 15 seconds, we should get that. And then the onboard computers hopefully taking control of the count at that point. They will be the ones looking for any potential vehicle issues. And if all goes according to plan, hopefully in just about 1 minute, Hera will be off the ground. And a reminder, this is an instant launch window. And also the fact that they have already started fueling means that they are committed regardless. standing by now, 45 seconds, hopefully to hear go for launch. We will update you as soon as we hear that. About 30 seconds away. And again, once it does lift off, we will stop talking and let you listen to the audio. About 15 seconds. Ten seconds. Keep an eye at the base of the rocket for the engine ignition. There's the water deluge. The rainbirds. Ignition. And liftoff of Hera. Snaking through the weather on its way to a pair of asteroids, and it has cleared the tower. May not be able to see it from our cameras, but boy, the team getting some fantastic launch sounds. Absolutely love that crackle. About 80 seconds into flight, Falcon 9 passing through max Q, maximum aerodynamic pressure pushing down on the vehicle right now. Oh, Cody, you gotta love that.
Yeah, I love those through the cloud shots. Oh, they're so good. I love it. You know, with the very low probability of launch today, I was a little worried, but I'm so happy to see this thing flying.
Absolutely. Coming up on about 2 minutes into flight now. Already 35 kilometers up, and we'll be coming up on a couple events in rapid succession, starting with MECO, main engine cutoff, and the 9 Merlin Wendy engines will shut down. That'll be followed by stage separation of the first and second stage, and then we will have SES-1, second engine start 1, when that Merlin vacuum engine ignites to continue to propel Hera on its way. And a reminder, this first stage is not going to be recovered, so there is no landing for stage 1. Bit more on the old-fashioned side. Love that plume expansion as you get into the thinner parts of the atmosphere. And coming up on MECO, we have main engine cutoff, separation, and second stage ignition. Merlin vacuum engine firing up, booster 1061 on its way to its final return into Earth here, not to land. Thank you for all of your service. And then the normal-sized Merlin vacuum engine firing up there. D, do we have you back on comms?
Yes, you do.
All right, how was that?
I would have liked to be able to see more of the launch. I can't lie. The audio was really nice, but I do prefer to see the rockets more than 15 seconds.
Yeah, minor detail. But we'll also get to see these payloads here now as the payload fairings jettison away, exposing Hera to space.
Was that a zip tie I saw?
It almost looked like one a little bit. And now already at 12,000 kilometers an hour, 130 kilometers up in altitude here. This burn should last for another 3 minutes or so. And that will be SECO 1. It will then coast for 45 more minutes before an additional engine start for a minute and 40-second long burn, with the satellite deployment happening about 1 hour, 16 minutes after liftoff. It's so weird not having the first stage to follow back to land, I gotta say.
Yeah, I had not seen the flip around was a bit jarring for this launch, but we salute you, 1061. Thank you for your service.
Yes, exactly. And you can see there everything appearing to go well so far on that second stage. I know there's questions a lot about it, but what is that kind of like silvery stuff on the right side of the screen?
Yeah, so that's the kind of heat shielding. It's a bit of, you could almost think of it as like aluminum foil. It's a mylar blanket that's wrapped around the engine section to keep the solar heating at a minimum. You can have a big thermal difference from one side of your spacecraft to the other if you have one side in the sun and one side in the dark of space. So you want to make sure, especially when you're working with cryogenic propellants, you are not introducing super high differences in temperature, because that can cause some issues.
Exactly. And I know there's been concerns about ice forming and things like that, as we've seen on past missions, but so far, everything looking good from what we can see here. As it heads southeasterly, you can look back and see just the crazy clouds that somehow it managed to find a gap in that weather. I'm amazed by that. D, did you think this was going to go today?
I really did not. I was sure it wasn't. I feel like I've said that on a couple launches recently, but the weather has not been good, and they have managed to find uh, a, a gap in the clouds. I guess not literally in this case, but a gap in the weather such that they can launch. You might be able to hear the wind is picking up as I'm talking, but yeah, I was not thinking we were going to see a launch today, but sure enough, it took flight, and it's honestly really impressive to see.
Yeah, exactly. We had Crew 9 where the weather was iffy. We had Polaris Dawn where the weather was iffy. We've had Hera now where the weather was iffy, and yet they managed to do it 3 times now. I don't know how SpaceX does it, but it's impressive. So we should be coming up shortly on SECO 1. Again, that is second engine cutoff, when that Merlin vacuum engine will shut down. It will have one more burn later to go, as mentioned, about 45 minutes after SECO. So we should be seeing that happening just a couple of seconds here. Already 163 kilometers in altitude. Just under 27,000 kilometers per hour at SECO. Second engine cutoff 1. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. That's amazing.
Indeed. I'd love to see it.
I do want to thank some people for their support during that launch. A Golden Crystallian saying if the rocket can launch today and has to be moved to the VAB during the hurricane, how long would it take? Which, thankfully, we didn't need that. It would have taken, they could probably roll it back to the HIF, the Horizontal Integration Facility, in relatively quick time. We're talking hours, not days. And then also saying, hope that you and the team stay safe this week. Remember to top off your gasoline and propane tanks. Thank you. Oh no, we will do our best to be safe, as well as our propane and propane accessories. That was terrible. Judith Thompson, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. Nina getting an item from the shop saying, "Thank you, NSF, for your broadcast." Well, thank you for tuning in and also for grabbing the launch entry landing shirt. Quite appropriate given that there was no entry or landing for this flight, but great merch nonetheless and great purchase. And Nick Salve saying, "What's the purpose of the coast phase?" That's a good question. What is the purpose of the coast phase, Cody?
So the coast phase is kind of there to allow them to get into a nice orbit and evaluate like how well did they get what orbit did they get into, how was the performance of the first stage, what do they need to do to make sure that they are able to get a good orbit or a good I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word, a good burn to get to the Dimorphos and Didymus. They want to make sure that they can hit that target very well. So they want a little bit of time to go back around. And also, you probably wouldn't want to do the burn all at once. Splitting up into 2 burns allows for better heat transfer. It reduces the amount of air that you'd accumulate over a single burn. And so, yeah, doing that second go around just gives them a little bit more time.
Yep, and then getting in that exact right spot to get the most effective and most efficient burn for this vehicle, too. IR Geek saying, "Thank you for the great coverage." Well, thank you for joining us for said coverage. And then Spike's Trailer Park, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. So kind of a reminder then, Cody, I know you were talking about it earlier. We've got the burn coming up in about 45 minutes, but how long will it take to get out to Didymos?
Yeah, so it's going to take around 762 days. Actually, let me confirm that number. I'm so sorry. Let me grab that again. It will be... Pause for anticipation. 798 days. There we go. So it's going to arrive on December 14th, 2026. So it's going to be a 2-year, 2-month, 7-day transfer to get out to Didymus and Dimorphos. So a bit of a trek there.
A little bit of a trek, yes. And as you mentioned, flying close to Mars as well.
Yep, in March of 2025, they're going to get within 6,000 kilometers of Mars's surface, and they're also going to fly by Deimos, which is the moon of Mars, flying within 1,000 kilometers of its surface. So they're going to be using that flyby to kind of train the sensors and calibrate the sensors to make sure that they're going to be able to record good data all the way out there at the asteroid. So we're going to probably get some good photos out there of Deimos and Mars. That's going to be pretty exciting.
So you had Didymos, Dimorphos, and Deimos all being visited.
Not confusing at all, swear. Not
No.
confusing at all.
And launching with the Merlin 1D engines. D, I think this is your mission.
Sure.
I love there's also sure. By the way, we do have some replays coming, so stand by for that. We will get you those awesome views. And then there's a good chance that we're not done with live coverage today because Starbase is starting to get active as well. So stay tuned because we've got the replays for you here shortly. And then as soon as there's activity going on, we had the stack of Booster 12 and Ship 30 the other day. And now, hopefully, we will get the maybe a wet dress rehearsal today. We'll have to see. So stay tuned for testing there. Let's see. Someone's asking, is that the most visits? Not entirely sure. And then just to confirm, Sponge 1310 asking again, why no booster recovery? Was it not enough fuel, D?
Pretty much. They needed a higher performance mission, and when you need those higher performance missions, you don't always have the remaining fuel to perform a landing burn. So they planned it out that way. And it's great to see that this vehicle can launch in different configurations to optimize for different mission requirements.
Exactly. And as mentioned, at least we had the fairing separation. Those are usually recovered. We do have Doug located downrange, over 1,000 kilometers downrange, to hopefully scoop those up and then bring them back to be flown and used again.
Oh, wow. I didn't know if they were going to go for those ones. That's a long ways out.
Yeah, no kidding. 1,025 kilometers to the southeast, which at least is out of the way of the storm for now. So scoop those up and head on back to safety.
I want to see those on return because that's probably a pretty high energy reentry for those fairings, considering what they normally go through.
Oh, yeah. Which, for those who don't know, how do they recover them?
Yeah, so the fairings, they'll separate, of course, off the second stage, and then they have a small parachute attached to them. So as they drift further down range, they'll kind of re-enter and they'll deploy their parachute, and then they'll land in the ocean. And then a ship will come up alongside them. In this case, Doug, I believe you said, and they'll scoop it out of the water, put it on the deck, and then sail the way back. They'll refurbish it a little bit, and then they'll put it on a Falcon 9 to launch again. And those fairings are very expensive parts of the vehicle, and so to be able to reuse them is a great cost savings measure that SpaceX is doing there.
Yeah, saves a couple $1,000,000. Why not, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of bringing it back, let's bring it back to T0 and take a look at some of the awesome replays that we have of launch. They may not be the longest replays given the cloud cover, but should still get some really cool views of Falcon 9 and Hera. That the view from the KSC press site, from one of our cameras that we have there, one of the remote cameras, punching through the cloud. Gotta love the view, at least for as long as it lasts. Someone with a good description of it: catching a pallet of money from the sky. Although not catching anymore. At one point they did. They did have a net that they used to catch everything on giant boats. It was one of those bizarre looking things ever. I'm glad they kind of just resorted back to scooping up from the water.
It did look a bit goofy, and I think it was a little too much effort compared to scooping it out of the water and repairing the water damage.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, there was nothing like seeing them, especially when they had a fairing half in it. But yeah, looking back on it, Miss Tree and Miss Chief were something special.
They used to have live shots of it too, right?
I believe they tried. I know they posted on Twitter at the time, X now, some video from it of some of the landings. And let's enjoy the audio again. There you go. Gotta love the crackle there. Not the grackles, that's down at Starbase, but gotta love the crackle. Oh boy, and with that, I think we can start winding things down here a little bit. D, I know you're probably ready to get in and out of any potential weather coming. Thank you so much for rolling out and joining us on comms.
Of course. It's always a great day when you have a launch.
Exactly. And also shout out as well to Max out in the field as well. The Cape team doing a fantastic job as always today. So thank you, D. Thank you, Max. And Cody, thank you for joining as well here for commentary.
Thank you. It's always incredible to be here, and I can't wait to cover more launches in the future.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for the pace to pick back up again with the next big launch, hopefully being Europa Clipper, was originally going to be the 10th. They are standing down from that, though, due to weather. So we will see when Clippy flies. And Carson, the one pushing the buttons, pulling the levers behind the scenes, thank you for making those views happen. I have been your host, Sawyer Rosenstein. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining for this Hera launch stream. Don't forget, testing happening at Starbase today, so head on over to Starbase Live to check out the 24/7 views there. And once big testing starts, we will have another dedicated stream. So more awesome live space coming later today. Until then, have a great one, everybody.
And here we go.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RS-68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, with planet.
Tango down to nominal.
Flight outside STD off. Say again, STD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting the flare, correct?